Hi, I'm Eric Kurland from 3D Space. During the height of the 3D boom in the early 1950s, a number of comic book publishers tried to cash in by releasing 3D comic books. Three Dimension Comics starring Mighty Mouse was the first, published in July of 1953 by St. John's Press. Other companies like Harvey Comics and National Comics followed soon after, releasing their own 3D titles. Now, William Gaines, whose company EC Comics had made a name for itself publishing genre titles like Tales from the Crypt, Weird Science, and crime suspense stories, decided to jump into the game and began work on 3 books in the fall of 1953. Three-dimensional EC Classics, released in the spring of 1954, was the first of EC's offerings and was an anthology featuring 4 different stories that had previously been published in other books, including EC's popular comedy title, Mad. New artwork was drawn for the stories to better show off their 3D effects, and the book came with a pair of red and green anaglyph glasses. Three-dimensional Tales from the Crypt of Terror, released in March 1954, was the second book in the series, this time featuring all horror stories recycled from the pages of Tales from the Crypt and the Vault of Horror, again newly illustrated for enhanced 3D, and this time featuring EC's popular comic narrator, the Crypt Keeper. Unfortunately, by the time that these 2 books were printed, the 3D craze had pretty much worn itself out. 3D movies had proven to be expensive to distribute and technically difficult to project, so theatrical production was waning, and 3D comic books weren't selling as many copies at the newsstands. In addition, Gaines had been involved in a legal dispute with St. John's Press over the patent to making 3D comic art, and that case had taken its toll on both companies. Then, in April of 1954, Gaines was called to testify before the U.S. Senate in their famous investigation into comic books' contribution to juvenile delinquency. Gaines' testimony proved damaging, and EC ultimately was forced to halt publication of all of its horror and crime titles. These factors led to the cancellation of the 3rd book in EC's 3D series, which would have been a collection of redrawn sci-fi stories from the pages of Weird Science. EC did sort of revisit 3D comics in the June 1954 issue of Mad, where they included a story called 3 Dimensions. It was presented in red and green to look like a 3D comic, but it wasn't actually in 3D. Instead, it was a humorous tale making fun of the whole short-lived 3D comic book fad. Now, that wasn't quite the end of the line for EC's 3D comics, though. The new artwork for the unpublished 3D sci-fi book had been drawn and inked, and in the late 1960s and early 1970s, a couple of fanzines got a hold of those pages of art and published them, but only in 2D as the 3D separations hadn't been completed. Now, to this date, the 3-dimensional Weird Science issue has yet to be published in 3D. However, there is a way to see them in 3D. A Los Angeles-based theater troupe called Captured Aural Phantasy Theater is the only group actually authorized by the current owners of EC Comics to bring their stories to the stage in live multimedia performances that combine radio drama-style acting with classic comic book art.
Later, in a cloud of rocket exhaust, the ship rose from the surface of Venus and sped outward, into the void, into the black gulf, toward Earth, toward home.
2 brilliant scientists, dead. The planet is a place of horror.
In December of 2014, 3D Space partnered with them for a live performance of stories from the 2 published EC books. Then, in the summer of 2015, 3D Space received permission to finally complete the 3D artwork on the sci-fi stories for a live performance that had its world premiere at the San Diego Comic-Con. At the show, the audience receives their anaglyph glasses, and they can see the panels projected on the screen in all of their 3D glory. If you're in the Los Angeles area, you can visit Captured Aural Phantasy Theater's website to get tickets for their upcoming performances and see the lost EC 3D comic for yourself. The 3D Space Museum collection includes a library of 1950s 3D comic books. And with your help, we'll be able to digitize and restore these stories so they can once again be read and enjoyed. Please visit our website at 3dspace.org and become a sustaining patron. Your pledge of as little as $5 a month will allow us to continue our preservation work and to continue creating educational 3D content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time with more 3D in depth.